Welcome to our video on TIP, Teacher Input, as a part of BIC, Building Instructional Coherence. As we look at our core instructional model, we see that TIP fits right in here. Now, although it's the second item listed in our core instructional model, we always keep in mind that TIP and SAP are very fluid. So there might be some teacher input and then some student participation, and you might need to go back into teacher input, go back into student active participation. We're filming them as two separate videos, but we want to keep in mind that there's a really strong relationship of just going back and forth in between these as is needed. When we look at our lesson planning template, here's where TIP sits in our lesson plan. It is the me and the we of our lesson planning template. Let's take a look at our thinking frame and see the questions we can ask ourselves as we plan this part of our lesson. Let's zoom in on these questions a little bit, and I'm going to give you a moment to read through them here on your screen. As you are reading through these, I want to point out a couple of words that might have stood out to you, and that's modeling and thinking aloud. We're going to focus on those and then come back and talk about some of the other pieces that we have here. First of all, teacher models and thinks aloud. Well, we know what the modeling part is. The modeling part is the teaching part. It's showing our students how to engage with our content. But what about a think aloud? A think aloud is saying out loud what we want our students to be thinking. It's giving our kids words for what we want to be going on in their brains. Our goal is for our students to be metacognitive, to be able to think about their own thinking. Once students can think, how did I solve that problem, and really articulate the steps that they went through in order to solve a problem, then they own that knowledge. We know it's not about just getting those right answers. It's about knowing the way to get those answers, and that's involving metacognition. But it's not such an easy thing. So what we're going to do is model. We are going to model that thought process for our student, and the way we're going to model it is through think alouds. We are going to verbalize our thoughts to show our students what it looks like to think about our thinking. Now, a think aloud has several different pieces to it. There's some thinking that needs to go into it before, there's what we do during, and then there's how we follow up with it afterward. Let's talk about each of these parts individually. So, before. As I'm planning my lesson and I know that I want to think aloud, I need to identify the skill and the kind of thinking that I'm going to model. Select the task, what I'm going to use in my think aloud. List my steps. I might even go so far as to script the words that I'm going to say if this is something that I'm new to. And I might even rehearse it so that I know I'm going to be able to do it. Oftentimes teachers, will put something into the lesson plan like, think aloud about this. And then it comes time for that in the lesson and we're like, yeah, I can't remember what I meant by that. And then we just keep going because, we've got these students sitting right in front of us. So in the beginning, taking the time to really list the steps, to script out what you're going to write, this might be helpful the first few times that you actually do a think aloud. So during the think aloud, I'm going to let my students know, hey guys, I'm going to think aloud right now about how to solve this problem. I'm not looking for a student interaction. If you have a question, you're just going to have to wait till the end because right now I'm just going to model for you what it might look like to solve this problem. And I just want you to observe me as I say out loud what's going on in my head. During the think aloud, I'm going to stick to the script. That means that the character I'm playing is a learner. So there's a little bit of acting involved here because of course we know how to do these things that we're modeling for our students, but we're going to kind of pretend that we're a learner. We're going to ask ourselves questions and then we're going to answer those questions ourselves. We're not tossing it out to our students as we often do, teachers. We're going to ask a question and answer it ourselves. This is still the me, just watch me work through this problem. And we're going to narrate our actions as we are going. We're going to verbalize the struggle. We're going to put words to what might be going on in our head as we attempt to solve a problem or write an opening paragraph or whatever it might be. So we might say, I didn't really understand what the author meant when he said this. So I think what I need to do is go back and read it again. I might have missed something. It's going to be really important to self-correct and to model perseverance. I don't need to work it out perfectly every time. If I see that my students are making a common mistake, I might model making that mistake and then struggling through to get to the correct answer. So I might just say, I got an answer, but it doesn't make sense. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and I'm just going to try this whole thing again. We're modeling for students what we want them to do, what good learners do. Good learners struggle. We just struggle well. Everything isn't supposed to be instantly easy. The point of learning is that I'm learning how to do it. So then I go back and try it again and say, you know what? That solution didn't work either, but I am going to figure this out. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to read that entire problem again. We're just showing students what we want them to be doing. We're pretending that we're the ones with the issue and modeling for them what it would look like to work through that issue. Then afterward, we can do a little quick debrief with our students, talk about what we just modeled for them, get their input now as to what they thought was successful. So I'm going to give you an example of thinking aloud and modeling. I'm going to use an 8th grade social studies class as an example, and let's imagine that they are studying the Declaration of Independence. So we are displaying that second paragraph that says, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." Now, as the teacher, I might say, oh, wow, that's a lot. And it's some complicated language in there. So let's see if I can break this down into some smaller chunks and understand it piece by piece. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. That's a really confusing opening. What does self-evident mean? That's not language we use here in modern speech. And what are these truths? We hold these truths. What truths is he talking about? I think I'm going to have to keep reading and see if I can figure that out. I do understand the part that says all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Okay, so maybe this is one of those truths. So I think Creator means God, but I'm really not sure about the word unalienable. So I think for now, the best solution might be just to skip that word, and I'm just going to read it as endowed by their Creator with certain rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, I understand that he's saying we have the right to life and liberty, and I know that liberty means freedom, but I wonder why he says the pursuit of happiness. I wonder why he didn't just say happiness. I'm going to tuck that away and think about it. What is it about the pursuit of happiness rather than just life, liberty, and happiness? I'm going to do some thinking about that. Okay, so I looked up self-evident, and it means that something is obvious. So Thomas Jefferson is saying that it's obvious that everyone is created equal. Okay, great. That's really helping me understand that. He's also saying that everyone has the God-given right to life, to freedom, and to pursue happiness. So the obvious truths that he's referring to are everyone is equal, and we all have these rights. Okay, so this is starting to make a lot more sense for me. I can understand this a lot better now that I've thought through it piece by piece. But hang on. How did TJ write these beautiful words at the same time that he thought he owned other human beings? Yeah, that's going to be something we're going to keep on talking about as we move through this chapter together. And scene. Okay, so that was the think aloud that this teacher was doing about that second paragraph in the Declaration of Independence. Basically, the teacher is just thinking aloud about those words. It's a really tricky piece to understand, so she's helping them see what it could look like to take something apart piece by piece to understand it. So what might that look like in your classroom? Well, if you teach ELA and your students are responding to a writing prompt, you might model for them, rather than just assigning, hey guys, here's a prompt, respond to it, model for them what that could look like. You know, when I'm responding to a writing prompt, there are a few things I need to do to write an opening paragraph. And the first thing I'm going to do is think about my audience. I'm going to go back to the prompt now and identify who my audience is, and on and on and on. For math, you might think aloud by saying, when I want to multiply fractions, I have to remind myself to multiply the numerators and then the denominators. And after that, I know I need to simplify that fraction to get an answer. In social studies, I've been thinking about the way the framers wrote the First Amendment. It guarantees free speech, and I think that they knew this is going to be an important right in this new country they just created. So as a reflection, I want you to think about what aspects of thinking aloud and modeling do you feel would be most useful for your class? And what would you do differently to make this applicable to your students? Now, we're going to carry on, go back into our thinking frame, and look at some specifics, because as we look at this, it talks about restating the purpose, academic vocabulary, engaging our students in the content, and teaching. This is actually our teaching part. What does that look like? What part of TIP is this? Well, this is the part where we do the me, the teaching part, and the we. Let's all do it together. Let's involve the students now to see what their level of understanding might be. This is when we give direct instruction about our content. This is the actual teaching part where look at me, eyes on me. I'm going to show you what this is, and I'm going to explain the assignment that they're about to do. Our next piece is student active participation. So this is the part where I'm going to explain to them, you guys are getting ready to do whatever. So teacher input is just 20%. It goes back and forth with this next video you're going to watch on student active participation. Thank you so much for your time.